The night clerk at that Circle K knew things about me he had no way of knowing. And when I stopped answering, his hands went somewhere I couldn't see. My sister was supposed to be at her freshman move-in by 10 a.m. on a Sunday. I pulled off into a Circle K just before 2 in the morning to get us 2 Gatorades and a bag of pretzels. That's when the night clerk asked me if I was alone. By the way, I'm Tasha, 29, freelance graphic designer, and Maya is 15 years younger than me and was doing her freshman year over. We'd left Atlanta at 10 the previous morning. Maya drove the first 6 hours, and I took it for the rest. By midnight, she'd been asleep in the passenger seat for almost 2 hours. Hoodie pulled up over her face. I was running on coffee, and the kind of low-grade road exhaustion that makes you think about strange things. Old conversations, songs you haven't heard in a decade, the names of dogs you used to walk for neighbors when you were a kid. I was fine. I was just tired. We had 90 minutes left, and I figured one more caffeine stop would carry us through to the campus parking lot. The thing about pulling off the highway at 2 a.m. on a stretch of road that has nothing on it is that you can't really pick a different stop. There isn't another option for 50 miles. You take what's there. If the place is fine, the place is fine. If the place isn't, you handle it. And you handle it without waking up your sleeping sister, because she's already had a bad enough year. The Circle K was the only thing lit up at the next exit. We'd passed a Wawa about an hour back, but I'd been too tired to register the exit. 2 pumps. One 18-wheeler parked off to the side of the lot. Lights off. Driver presumably asleep in the cab. The store windows had advertisements taped on them all the way down to the floor. Beer, lottery, ATM, so you couldn't really see in until you were past the glass. I parked Maya right out front under the canopy, left the engine running so the AC stayed on, took the keys, and went in. The fluorescent lighting was buzzing the way it always does, in places that need a ballast replaced. The whole store smelled faintly of stale coffee, like the pot had been sitting on the burner since the day shift. There was a small TV mounted on the wall behind the counter, playing a basketball replay with the volume off. There was nobody else in the store. The clerk was a man, maybe 45, in a blue Circle K polo with the sleeves rolled up. He'd been watching the basketball when I walked in, perched on a stool behind the counter. He didn't greet me when the door chimed. He swiveled the stool to face the cooler aisle as I went toward the back. Out of the corner of my eye, I watched him angle the convex security mirror, mounted above the register, so it pointed at the cooler door. Not the front door, not the candy aisle, the cooler I was at. I should have left right then. I told myself, in the second I had to think about it, that night shift jobs at convenience stores are boring. The job is boring. Watching anything that moves is the only thing that breaks the boredom. Maybe he was just curious. Maybe his shift had been dead for hours. Maybe he was the kind of guy who watches everyone the same way. And I'd noticed only because I was the only person there. I picked up 2 Gatorades. I started toward the front. He hadn't moved his eyes off the mirror the whole time. I watched him in the reflection of the cooler door as I closed it. He wasn't looking at the basketball. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was tracking the shape of me through the angle of that mirror, and his face had no particular expression on it, and that was the part that made my hands cold. I went to the coffee station. I didn't actually want coffee. I'd had 4 cups since midnight, but I wanted to be doing something with my hands so I could think. I pumped a small cup of dark roast slowly. The clerk had swiveled the stool again to keep me in his line of sight. The mirror was redundant now. He was just watching me directly. He didn't pretend to do anything else. The TV played silently behind him. I had my back to him at the creamer pumps when he spoke. He said, "You alone?" Just that. No preamble, no "how's your night" or "long drive." His voice was even and quiet, the way somebody asks if you found everything okay, but the question wasn't that question. I turned around, kept my face neutral, and said, "My sister's right outside." He nodded slowly. He said, "I figured." I went back to the creamer pumps. My hands were shaking. That wasn't the part that scared me. Maybe 10 seconds later, he said, "Is that her in the silver Honda?" I didn't answer immediately because the geometry of the question was wrong. The Honda was parked under the canopy at an angle that put the entire driver's side and the passenger window. On the side of the building you couldn't see from the register. He couldn't have seen the car when I pulled up unless he'd been at the door watching me park. I had not seen him at the door. I capped my coffee. I started toward the counter to pay. He was still on the stool. He said, "Long drive to Texas, huh? Where you all headed? Austin?" I felt the shape of the question land before I understood it. I had not said the word Texas. I had not given a destination. I had not even shown him an ID, because nobody buys gas with ID anymore, and nobody asks for ID for 2 Gatorades. He had no way to know. I set the coffee on the counter without paying for it. I set the Gatorades next to it. I did not set the pretzels because the pretzels were back at the snack aisle, and I was not going back to the snack aisle. The clerk's hands had moved off the counter at some point during the question. I couldn't see them anymore. They were below the lip, where the cigarette display blocks the view. He smiled. Small smile, no teeth. He said, "No charge tonight then. Whatever was happening in the next 5 seconds, I was not going to be a part of." I knew it the way you know the sentence somebody is about to say before they say it when you've watched their face for long enough. I don't know what was below that counter. I don't think I want to. I started backing up toward the door. He didn't move. His hands stayed below the counter. I turned my back on him at the threshold of the chime, which is a thing you are not supposed to do in a situation that feels like that one. I walked through the door, and I let it close behind me, without rushing. Maya was asleep in the passenger seat, hoodie up, head against the window. I unlocked the driver door, got in, locked the doors, started the car. I pulled out of the lot at exactly the speed limit, because some part of my brain was telling me, don't let him see me drive away fast. I made the on-ramp and got back on the interstate at 65. The exit sign for the next gas station was 26 miles. I drove the 26 miles in the right-hand lane with the hazards in my peripheral vision, watching for any pair of headlights coming up that I couldn't account for. Nothing came up. Maya didn't wake up. At the next gas station I pulled in, parked under the brightest light, and sat with both hands on the wheel for about 8 minutes before I trusted myself to get out and pump gas. I walked the 2 Gatorades I'd never paid for back into the car, at the next stop, and just left them in the cup holder. I never reported it. I had nothing to report. He hadn't touched me. He hadn't blocked me. He had asked 3 questions and made 1 small smile, and the only thing I could have told a state trooper was that the questions weren't right. I do bathroom breaks at pump-only stations now, the kind that don't have a clerk inside, just a card reader on the pump and a porta-john near the dumpster. I'd rather pee in a porta-john behind a gas station off the interstate than walk into a building where one person is alone behind a register at 2 in the morning. I tell myself, this is a small thing to give up. It isn't. It costs me time. I do it anyway. What I think about most is the mirror. He angled it before I'd even gotten to the cooler. He had been waiting for somebody. I have no way to know how many other people walked into that store that night. I have no way to know now.
I went out for cigarettes at 1:15 in the morning, walked into the Speedway on the corner, and the clerk had her hands above her head. My buddy Mike was getting married in 3 weeks. His bachelor weekend was supposed to be a quiet 2 nights at his uncle's lake house outside Bridgeport. I'm Eli, by the way, 32, sales manager at a packaging company, and Mike and I have been best friends since junior high in Stamford. We used to ride bikes to the Cumberland Farms on Hope Street after practice, split a slushie between us because neither of us had $2. It wasn't a wild bachelor weekend. We were all in our 30s. The plan was beer, the lake, a couple of bad cigars on the dock, sleep until 10. There were 6 of us. Mike, his cousin Drew, 2 of his college roommates, my brother Jordan, and me. The lake house had 2 bedrooms and a sleeper couch, and we'd drawn straws for who got what. I'd lost. By 1 a.m. on Friday, I was on the couch in the living room. Mike was halfway through reminding me of a story about a Mexican restaurant in college. I had heard him tell it 3 other times that night, and I'd realized I was out of cigarettes. I got up, said I was running to the corner, took my keys. The Speedway was 4 blocks down on the cross street. I'd been to it twice already that day. The clerk on the day shift had been a heavy-set guy named Pete, with a salt and pepper beard. He'd asked us if we were the bachelor party, because Mike had bought a six-pack with a wedding pun joke on it. The night shift clerk, when I went in, was somebody different. I didn't recognize her. I didn't know her name. The store had 2 people in it, including her, and I was the third, and I didn't process any of that as I was opening the door. What happened was that the Speedway has a chime on the front door, and the chime sounds the same way it always does in places like that. 2 notes, low pitch, almost cheerful. I heard it. I stepped through the doorway. There was somebody at the counter, dark hoodie up, back to me. The clerk was facing him. The clerk's eyes went over his shoulder when the chime sounded, and they found mine, and they were wide enough that the white showed all the way around the iris. Her mouth was tight in a way that was not a smile. Her hands were at her shoulders, palms forward, fingers spread. The man at the counter did not turn around. He did not move at all. He was still. I didn't know it yet, but the next 45 seconds were going to change the way I lived the rest of my life. Maybe 2 seconds passed where my brain refused to assemble what I was looking at. The clerk's posture was wrong, but explainable. Maybe she was reaching for something on a high shelf. Maybe she was stretching. The man's stillness was wrong, but explainable. Maybe he was looking at something on the counter, deciding what gum to buy. The 2 of them in combination was not explainable. The combination was a robbery. I was standing in the door of an active armed robbery, and the clerk was looking at me through the eyes of someone who had been told by somebody else to do exactly what she was doing and not move. What I did next is the part I have replayed in my head every single night since. I almost backed out the door. I almost just turned around and walked out. The hinge of the door was still in motion behind me. The chime had only just finished its second note. If I'd stepped back through it in the next half second, the man at the counter could have written me off as a customer who decided he was at the wrong store. He hadn't seen my face yet. He was still facing the clerk. But the door behind me had a closer on it. It was already swinging shut, and it was loud the way old store doors are when they pull on the hydraulic. I knew, in the time it took me to register, that the door was going to close behind me. That backing out fast would make sound. Sound would make him turn. He would turn and see me. The door closed. The chime did its 2 notes again on the close. The man at the counter turned his head about 30 degrees, slowly, and his eye found me through the gap of the hood. The mask was a black neoprene face cover, the kind motorcyclists use in winter, with eye holes. His eyes did not reach his expression. There was a handgun in his right hand. It had been on the counter. Now it was in his hand. He did not raise it. He just held it visibly. I had a fraction of a second to decide who I was going to be. There was no time to actually think. The version of me that ran was going to die. The version of me that screamed was going to die. The version of me that froze was going to die. The version of me that pretended to be a man, too tired to register what was happening, might walk back out of this. I picked the 4th one. I made my face do nothing. I said, "Sorry, didn't realize you were busy." Loud enough to carry? I pointed vaguely at the cooler. "Just gonna grab a milk." I walked, slow but not too slow, toward the cooler aisle, out of his line of sight, behind the candy display, through the chip aisle. As I moved past him, I made my eyes go to the cooler, and not to him. In the security mirror that was angled at the candy aisle, I caught his reflection. His free hand had gone to his waistband on the left side. His fingers had brushed something there. There was a second weapon. I do not know what it was. I do not need to. I made it to the cooler. I opened the door. I stood in the cold air with my back to the front of the store, and I did the only thing I could think of. My hand went to my pocket. My phone was in my pocket. I have an iPhone with the emergency SOS feature, one that triggers if you hold the side button and a volume button at the same time for 3 seconds. I started the timer. I held the phone through the fabric. I counted. I did not pick a milk. I just stood there pretending to read labels. From behind me, I heard the man tell the clerk very calmly, 2 more seconds and we're done. I want you to count to 2, and then I want you to put your face on the counter. The clerk made a sound that was not a word. The phone in my pocket finished its 3-second hold. The emergency SOS auto-dialed 911, recorded my location, started broadcasting. I did not hear it. The volume was off. I just had to trust the timer had run. I heard the cash drawer slide open. I heard a paper bag being shaken out. I heard footsteps moving fast away from the counter. I did not turn. I kept my back to the front of the store. I kept my hand at the cooler, and I waited for the gunshot, because the part of my brain that handles math had already told me he was not going to leave a witness behind. There was no gunshot. There was the back emergency door alarm, faint, a pulse that didn't trigger any audible sound but lit up a little red light at the back of the store. And then there was nothing. I waited maybe 10 seconds. I turned around. The clerk was on the floor behind the counter. I could see the top of her head. She was not moving. I called out, "Are you okay?" And her hand came up and gave me a thumbs up, shaking. I went to the door and ran out into the parking lot. The first siren was hitting the cross street about 3 blocks away. The emergency SOS had routed dispatch directly. The first patrol car arrived 4 minutes after I'd left the cooler. The second one was 18 seconds behind the first. The officers cleared the store. The clerk was uninjured. The cash bag was gone. The man was gone. They got him within 12 hours. The Speedway had 4 cameras, 2 of which had clear angles on his face when his hood shifted as he walked around the candy aisle. They matched him to a guy who'd done 2 prior armed robberies in Bridgeport in the previous 6 weeks. He took a plea, 8 years. The detective who interviewed me said a couple of things I have not been able to forget. Honestly, I think about them every time I drive past a gas station after midnight. The first one was that the suspect's pattern on his prior 2 robberies was different. He had not had a witness walk in before. They didn't know what he'd planned to do. I quit smoking 8 months later. I've been trying to quit for 2 years before that. What finally did it? Every cigarette I picked up put me right back in that cooler aisle, holding my phone through my pocket. Counting. I did 4 months of cognitive therapy. I do not go into convenience stores after dark. If I need something at night, I drive 20 minutes to the 24-hour grocery, where there are cameras and other shoppers, and a security guard at the door. The detective never told me what he thought the man had planned to do once he'd taken the cash. I never asked. There are some questions you stop wanting the answer to once you understand the shape of the answer.
He had matched my schedule exactly. 3 Saturdays in a row, same silver sedan, same parking spot, same 6 a.m. And when I finally walked into the 7-Eleven that morning, he was already inside, holding an empty cup he had not filled, watching the door. I'd been planning my mom's surprise 60th birthday party for almost 3 months. Saturday morning at 6, I drove to the corner store for ice and candles. That was when I noticed the sedan again. By the way, I'm Hailey, 27, kindergarten teacher in suburban Atlanta, and the 7-Eleven on the corner is 2 blocks from my apartment. I am a routine person. Teachers are routine people, mostly, because the kindergartners are not, and you have to bring your own structure to the classroom or you don't survive. So my routines are tight. Saturday mornings, I go for coffee at 6. Sundays, I go for the paper at 7. I shop the same Aldi on Tuesday afternoons. I have a Wednesday night Pilates class at 7:15. I'd been doing the Saturday 6 a.m. thought thing at this particular 7-Eleven for almost 2 years. I like to be at the gym at 7 on Saturdays. The 7-Eleven coffee is fine. The line is always empty at that hour. The Dunkin' 2 blocks the other direction has a line out the door at 6 a.m. and isn't worth the extra wait. The thing about being a routine person is that you become predictable. You don't notice this about yourself, because to you, your life is just a series of small choices that happen to be the same most weeks. To anyone watching you from the outside, your life is a schedule. You can be picked up. You can be planned around. And I had been running the same schedule for 2 years. The reason I noticed the sedan at all, he had not made his routine slightly different from mine. He had matched it exactly, and I had been matching mine for years. That Saturday in March, I had the day mostly mapped already. I was hosting my mom's surprise 60th at 3 p.m. at my apartment, which my older brother and I had been planning since December. The whole family was driving in from out of state. I had a list of last-minute things on my phone, bag of ice, 60 candles and numbers I'd already special ordered, mixers, Garbage bags. The 7-Eleven only handled the first 2. The rest I'd grab on the way back from the grocery. I left the apartment at 5:58 a.m., made the corner in 3 minutes, pulled into the lot in front of the store, and put the car in park. I sat there for maybe 4 seconds before I looked up from my phone. That was when I saw the sedan. It was parked in the spot at the far edge of the lot, against the chain-link fence, nose pointed at the storefront. Silver Hyundai, mid-size, 3 or 4 years old. I knew the car because I'd noticed it the previous Saturday, also parked in that exact spot. I'd had the brief thought of, that's the second time this month I've seen that car at the 7-Eleven on a Saturday morning, and then I'd forgotten about it until right then. 3 weeks. Same spot. I went into the store. I told myself, honestly, I tried hard, that it was a coworker on the same shift schedule as somebody at the 7-Eleven. Somebody who got off the night shift somewhere local and stopped here for breakfast at 6. Somebody who lived in the apartment complex behind the lot and walked over for coffee every Saturday morning. There were 6 explanations for the same car parked at the same time in the same spot, and all 6 were normal, and none of them required me to think any harder about it. He was inside. I saw him at the coffee station as I walked in. Mid-30s, unremarkable height, gray sweatshirt, baseball cap. He was holding a paper cup, but he had not poured anything into it. The pump on the dark roast carafe was untouched. He had not been mid-pour. He had been standing still, holding an empty cup, watching the door. I went past him to the cooler. He glanced down at his cup the second I made eye contact. I did the math in my head while I was opening the freezer for the bag of ice. 3 Saturdays was not a coincidence. I knew that, and I think he knew I knew. 3 weeks, same car, same spot. Now in the store at the same time as me, holding a cup he had not filled. I picked up the ice. I picked up the candles from the impulse aisle. I went to the register. He left his cup on the counter at the coffee station and walked toward the side door. I paid. I watched the door, not the cashier. I should have asked the cashier to walk me out. I didn't. The side door of the 7-Eleven goes out to the alley between the store and the apartment complex. The front door faces the lot where my car was. He had taken the side door. I walked out the front door, and as I came around the corner of the building toward my car, I could see him in the alley still. He had not gone to his car. He was standing at the corner of the building, looking out toward the front lot. He was watching where my car was. He saw me come out the front. He moved fast then, walking back the way he had come, around the back of the building toward the far edge of the lot where his sedan was. By the time I had loaded the ice and the candles into my passenger seat, he was in the driver's seat of the silver Hyundai. The engine was on. He had not started it before. He had not had time to walk to it slowly. I had taken 30 seconds to load my groceries. He was in the car. The car was running. I started my engine. I pulled out of the lot. I did not turn toward the apartment, which was the obvious next move. I turned the other direction, away from home, toward the road that leads out of my neighborhood. I made it 12 seconds. The Hyundai pulled out of the lot, took the same direction I had, and stayed about 2 blocks back. The traffic was thin enough at 6 a.m. that it was easy to see. I made a right when I had not been planning to make a right. He made the right too. I turned 3 more times. 2 of the turns I had never made in my entire 2 years of living in this neighborhood. But that was not the part that made me call the police the next morning. He followed every single one. He did not close the gap. He stayed about 2 blocks back, exactly 2 blocks back the whole time, like he was using the rearview mirror tactic that police cars use when they're trailing somebody but trying not to look like they are. I had no idea where I was driving. I just kept turning. At a 4-way stop in a residential block I'd never been on, I came up to the line. I let the car settle. I waited the full count. The Hyundai was about 100 feet behind me, just sitting back from the intersection. The light at the cross street ahead of me was yellow. I waited. I watched the light. The light went red. I let it stay red for a full second. Then I floored the accelerator and ran the red hard and made a left 2 blocks down a one-way I just clocked, and the Hyundai stopped at the red and lost me. I drove for another 15 minutes through neighborhoods I had no relationship with, watching every set of headlights behind me. None of them were the Hyundai. I pulled into the parking lot of a Waffle House on Memorial Drive and called my brother, who was in town for the party. I told him not to come to the apartment yet. I told him to meet me at the Waffle House. I sat in a booth that faced the parking lot. He got there 20 minutes later. We drove in convoy back to the apartment. I went inside with him. I locked everything. My mom's party went forward. I told her nothing. The Monday morning after, I drove to the 7-Eleven with a police officer from the precinct that covered my apartment. The store manager pulled the Saturday morning footage from the past 4 weekends. The Hyundai was in the lot for at least 5 hours, not 3. The plate was clean. The CCTV got it 3 times. The manager told the officer when she found out what the footage was for, that guy had been making 3 of her clerks uncomfortable for months. She had not connected him to anything specific. She had assumed he was just lonely. They identified him within 48 hours. He had a prior cyberstalking complaint from a woman at a gym across town the year before, and the complaint had not gone to charges. With my report and the 7-Eleven footage and the previous complainant's records, the DA filed charges and the judge granted an emergency restraining order. I changed 7-Elevens. I changed gyms. I changed Pilates classes. I bought pepper spray and a Ring camera for my front door, and I rotate which days I go for groceries now, randomly, to break the pattern. I sometimes wonder, on the Saturdays when I go to the new 7-Eleven across town for the new bag of ice, that's still the part I cannot turn off. How many other women he was watching at the same time? I have not asked the detective. I do not actually want the number.